Today we're going to continue our series called Fixer Upper, Building Marriages That Last. And just to be honest, every sermon of this series, it's been stated in the context of a husband-wife relationship, but really all of the sermons really apply to our relationships with others. It's sort of crazy. I had a lady come up to me Thursday night after the Mosaic Center graduation. She said, "Pastor, I've been looking for you. I really need to talk to you." She said, "I was trying to find out some things about the church and saw that I was trying to find out a little bit about you and saw your sermons are online and started going through." And she said, "There's these two ladies in our church that's been having conflict." And she said, "And so I saw that one of the sermons you did in this marriage series was on conflict." And she said, "So I watched that sermon." And she said, "I took the principles that were laid out in that sermon," which to be honest aren't original with me. But she said, "I took those principles," and she said, "I was able to take them back into my church and help these two ladies begin to work through their difference." And she said, "I just wanted you to know, one, that somebody does listen to your sermons, and that two, that God even uses your sermons." So, but anyway, just to let you know that within the context, that really the principles that we look at apply both to marriage and not. And so today we're going to look at really the number one cause of divorce and marital unhappiness. Just a question, what do you think would be the number one cause of divorce and marital unhappiness? Money. I mean, it ought to be obvious right there. I got on budget. It's financial stress is the number one cause of divorce and marital unhappiness. Kansas State University conducted a study of more than 4,500 newly married couples, and they tracked them over several years, and what they discovered was that the top predictor of divorce wasn't arguments about children, about sex, or even about in-laws. That was sort of surprising. Just kidding again. I need to be nice because my mother-in-law may make me sleep outside this week. But really it was arguments about money. And they talked about the fact that the deal about money is that when couples are fighting over money, that it seems like the language that's used is even more hateful, and that it seems to linger over a longer period of time. And oftentimes if those arguments happen in the early days of marriage, the feelings, the hurt feelings that happen in the beginning continue on, and so oftentimes those marriages end in divorce. But I want you to know this morning that financial peace is possible if we will follow a set of financial principles that I believe are found in God's Word. And I want you to know that it doesn't come easy, especially when we get ourselves under a heavy debt load. It's not something that we just wave some kind of little magic prayer around and then God just removes all of it. But instead it takes discipline, it takes hard work, and it takes sacrifice. But it is possible. It is possible to get out from underneath the weight of financial debt and to experience God's deliverance and to watch God work in our marriages. And so I want us this morning to look at 5 biblical principles that I believe lead to financial peace. And just to be honest with you this morning, these come from Dave Ramsey. They may not be exact language, but these principles, these 5 principles, they come ultimately, I believe, from God's Word, but also is laid out by Dave Ramsey in his study, Financial Peace. The first thing is we need to budget for financial margin. What does that mean to budget for financial margin? Anybody? What does that mean? Huh? To plan?
Don't plan to use all you got. Leave a reserve.
Leave a reserve. It means that we stop living paycheck to paycheck, right? Where you're struggling all the time is a constant struggle because there never seems to be enough money to make it through the month, or even for some of us the month, some every 2 weeks, some every week. It just seems like we don't know how we're going to get through that. In Proverbs chapter 21, verse 20, it says, "Precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling." Remember, go back into biblical times, and particularly the Old Testament, and that oil was considered for the wealthy. And so precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. And so what Solomon, if you want to sum up real quickly what Solomon is saying here in verses 21, or chapter 21, verse 20, is that the wise person exercises diligence and restraint in their spending, while a foolish man or woman spends everything that they earn. In other words, we get a raise, and what do we immediately do? We buy something, or we trade in the car we have, we buy a newer, bigger car, or we get a newer house. Every time we get a raise, we go and spend it on something else. And normally it's not just buying something one time. We're normally buying something that's going to have us paying out over the next several years, more than likely. And so we immediately begin to do that. But the margin is the difference between what we earn and what we spend. It should be our savings. And so if we're going to decrease financial stress, it will require that we have a plan, and our plan is our budget. And the margin prepares us to do what? If we save that margin, what is it preparing us to handle? Emergencies, because they always will come, right? As soon as you think you're not going to have emergencies, they're going to come. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And also other purchases. There's times that we know eventually we're going to need to purchase another car. We're going to have to buy gifts at Christmas. There's other things that we're going to have to do. And so we save that margin and we prepare ourselves for the future. And one of the things that I would encourage you to, if you don't already have this, is that you begin with trying to save $1,000 for this emergency fund. Save up a minimum of $1,000 for this emergency fund. And I know for some it seems like an impossible task, but if we'll begin to cut out some things that we don't need, the extras, the things that we think that we really need that really are just wants, instead of going to Starbucks every day of the week, maybe only go twice a week. That could save you quite a bit of money right there, right? Not to start any trouble in families. Missouri growing up hated the word budget. She couldn't comprehend the word budget meant that you were prepared for things in the future. To her, it meant I couldn't have what I wanted.
Call it a spending plan. They like that.
A spending plan? Okay.
They like to spend.
Yeah, I don't think that even would have helped because she'd want to spend right then. She wouldn't want to wait 6 months or a year. But begin with a $1,000 emergency fund to begin to keep at least $1,000 there. And I think the original, what Dave Ramsey says, eventually you want to get to a point you have 3 to 6 months in your account to prepare for future. Not only we need to prepare for the margin by budgeting, but also we need to get out of debt. This is the second thing. Proverbs 22 verse 7 says this: the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. And the point here is that debt is a form of slavery. Debt is debilitating and is demoralizing, isn't it? Have you ever been there where you get to a point of debt that you really begin to think, can I ever get out of this? And when it becomes so demoralizing and it cripples you. Even if you're able to pay your bills, it just becomes depressing. It's overwhelming. And so what we have to do is begin to set up a plan to be able to get ourselves out of the debt that we've put ourselves under, that we might experience the joy and the peace that God wants us to have in our lives. And again, our debt will not just disappear. There's no magical prayer that you pray and then it just all of a sudden just goes away. For far too many people, their idea is, well, if I just buy that lotto ticket, eventually I'm going to hit it rich and it's going to be me. And really, the lottery really is a tax on the poor, isn't it? Do what? A voluntary tax, which is even the worst kind, isn't it? So we begin to develop a strategy to get out of debt. Dave Ramsey recommends a strategy that he calls the debt snowball. And I want to just sort of go through first the 5 steps and then give an example of it. Step 1 is to begin, I mentioned earlier, saving $1,000 for an emergency fund. Step 2 is to list all your debts except for your house note, from smallest to the largest. Step 3 is to begin to make minimum payments on all the debts except for the smallest and throw as much money as you can on it. Begin to really attack the smallest debt first. Too often we make the mistake that I made, and I begin to consolidate all my debt onto one card, and then it begins to be where it's so large you think I can never get out from underneath this, right? And then all that, you're also paying about, 2 or 3% they charge you on that amount when you transfer it over off that one card. Off the different cards onto one card. And so it's really a game that we find ourselves in. And so the best way is to list out our debt from the smallest to the largest. And then we begin to attack the smallest debt with as much as we can throw at it, and then we move on. We'll talk about that in a moment. Step 4, once that debt is gone, we take its payment and apply it to the next smallest debt. Step 5 is repeat the process as you work your way through them. The more you pay off, the more your freed up money grows. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. Now, I want to quickly sort of go through an example of how the debt snowball works. And so I think I have it on the slide if it'll come up. Maybe my stuff's not. All right. So you have the first credit card. You've got $500 on it. It's a 13% interest, which may be sort of low nowadays, right, on our credit cards. It's amazing that interest rates are so low and yet credit card debt so often the percentage is so high, right? Usually it seems like it's around 21% or so. But credit card 1, there's $500 debt, 13% interest with a monthly payment of $25, a minimum payment of $25. Credit card 2, there's $1,000 at 19% interest with a monthly minimum payment of $50. You have a car loan of $6,000 at a 4% over 4 years with a monthly payment of $135. And then you have a student loan of $15,000. Boy, that'd be nice. At 5% over 10 years with a monthly payment of $159. And so if you pay the minimums on everything and then you're able to find another $100 a month that you can pull out and you begin to attack the smallest credit card payment, then you can have it paid off in 5 months. So then you begin to attack the second credit card debt at the tune of $175 a month. In other words, that $100 extra you're putting on the lowest card, you have there, and then you have the other $25 minimum payment you're making on the low card available, and then you have the $50 you're already paying on that card, and again, in 5 months, you're able to have the second card debt paid off as well. So now you have $310 a month, $175 plus the $135, and you begin to attack that, begin to attack the car note with that, and then the auto loan, you'll be able to have it paid off in 15 months instead of the 4 years. And so by this time, you're able to begin to attack the student loan with $469 each month, and then you're able to have it paid off in a couple of years and be totally out of debt. And so it's amazing that if you begin to think through the process and really begin to budget your living, what you're spending, begin to really budget it out, then you can begin to attack the debt, one debt at a time, until you have it paid off. And then once you have all those things paid off, you can begin to attack that home loan, right? You go from one thing to the next, getting out of that debt. And so the key is to get out of our debt, to get out from underneath the weight of that debt that restricts us from being able to take the vacations that we want to do, or either that or we just go do them and say, oh, we'll just put on my credit card, not realizing how much we're really paying for that vacation, right? And so we try to stay away from the credit cards. The third thing, and I hate that I use this term, but I know there's children in here, and some of them probably this is not a nice word, is that to not pay the stupid tax. To not pay the stupid tax. Does anyone here love to pay taxes? I mean, you get really excited when the income tax comes around April the 15th? Michael, you don't have to pay the tax yet. It'll be coming though. And so you got income tax, you got sales tax. I mean, you'll get one of those 20% discount cards, at Bed Bath & Beyond. You can't wait to go spend it, ladies, and you get there. And it really is only, a little over 10% discount, because then you got the 8.5% or whatever it is tax. So none of us like to pay the sales tax or the property tax. But there's one tax that we can keep from paying, and that is the stupid tax. In Proverbs 23, verse 20 and 21, it says, "Be not among drunkards or among gluttonous eaters of meat." Dawn would like that verse. She's a vegetarian, if you didn't know. "For the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and slumber will clothe them with rags." The hard thing about the stupid tax is that it's really like an anti-gift. It keeps taking. But the good thing is that you don't have to keep paying it into the future. You can stop it. I want to quickly go through a few things that are really, I would consider stupid tax, or really Dave Ramsey lays these out. I really cut one of them out because I know some of you have it, and I don't want to offend anybody on purpose. I'll go ahead and mention it, even though it's not in my outline, is because I deleted it, was, what do you call it, the timeshares. They say that timeshares really are a terrible idea. By the time you pay for, you go once or twice a year, maybe at most, you're restricted on when you can go, and then you're paying those property fees and all those things. They say it's really not a great idea, so I went ahead and offended you anyway. The number one on this stupid tax is the lottery. If you routinely play the lottery, instead of going to the store and buying those little dollar lotto tickets, what I want you to do is, instead of doing that next time, I want you to take off going down, no, don't go down 59 South, just drive through 1st Street. Or actually, you can come down 2 Lane and let me know when you're going to be here, and you can just start throwing your dollar bills out your window as you go by. Just chunk those dollars. Just kick them out, If your wife's with you, y'all can be kicking them out both doors. And if I don't get them, at least maybe a homeless guy will be walking through, and maybe he'll get them, and he can go get him a good hamburger that day. Because really, that's what you're doing by buying lottery tickets. You're wasting your money. So how do we avoid that? Instead of buying lottery tickets, I encourage you to take that dollar bill that you would have went and bought a lottery ticket. Instead, place that into a jar. and then once a year take the dollar bills that you stuffed into that jar and take it and either invest it in your retirement account, your 401k, or take it and invest it if you have small children. Go ahead and begin investing it in your children's college fund. It'll be a much better use of your money than the lottery. You know, I'm from Louisiana, and I still remember when they talked about the casinos. That man, if we just bring these casinos in, it's gonna our road system's gonna get better. Has it gotten any better? Our education system go better. Has the education system got any better? No. I don't know where that money goes to. It'd be really interesting to see where it goes, but I can promise you that it doesn't go where they say it's going, or either that or it's just wasted in those areas. I'm not sure, but it really sucks the life out of the poor community. If you go to Bossier, Shreveport, if you go to North Mississippi, you get off the beaten path and you start going and looking at the houses where the people who live there really live in. Except for the ones that are the big wigs working in the casinos, the poor get poor in those areas because they're always trying to get rich quick. And then you look at the number of families that are destroyed. Now, if you want to go and you want to throw your $20 at it, I mean, that's no different than me going to a movie and spending, $17 for a thing of popcorn and 2 Cokes. But honestly, most people can't go and just spend $20. They're going to spend a lot more than that. And you look at the number of families that it's destroyed, and it's to me, it's just a bad deal. Anyway, the other thing is car leases. Really, statistically, they say the most expensive way to drive a car is to lease a car. Now, no, again, if you're in certain tax things, sometimes you may get a break doing that, and so if that's you, that's okay. But according to this C&W marketing research, they say nearly 1 in 5 people lease the cars they drive. And then the National Auto Dealers Association, in other words, this is the Car Owners Association, they say they make more money off leasing a car than when you buy a car with cash. And so we need to try to avoid car leases. And again, there may be, for you, maybe that your tax guy may say it's a good idea and you can do it then. Instead, we ought to save our cash. For most of us, we ought to buy a used car instead of buying the depreciated car that we buy new and roll off the path. The other one is payday loans. I think other than lottery, I think the thing that really gets under my skin is the payday loan places. I wish they'd make them illegal. I can't tell you as a pastor how many people I've had come into my office that are in a bind with one of these payday loan places. And they're charging them over 100% interest on the loan, especially the title ones. Well, I had a lady come in when I was pastoring Calvary, and she had put her car up, and she only liked $200, but she's about to lose her car. And so we were going to help her with that $200. I mean, it wasn't a big deal, but we were going to help her. She was really trying to do the right things and trying to help herself. And so we called the payday loan place. Said, "Hey, we're fixing to write a check for $200 to send this lady. We will not accept it." They wouldn't accept the check from us, giving it to her. We had to bring the check. They made everything as impossible as possible so that they could try to get that woman's car from her. And so, this is my personal opinion, and I probably ought to keep it to myself, but I wish they would pass laws to either restrict what they can charge people for this and make it where it's a fair loan rather than taking advantage of people. And I know that they're probably taking a great risk by doing the payday loans, and hopefully one of you don't own one of those places, and I just offended you. But I know they're taking a greater risk, and it's part of why they charge a higher interest rate, but really they're gouging the poor. They're gouging the people that really can't afford to pay it. And so when you see a payday place and you're tempted to go in and give them your title so that you can make it, go somewhere. Do something else. Yeah, Mike?
Just on that point, they're structured in such a way as to get around the law. In my mind, they're still legal anyway.
Okay.
But there's usury, which is the highest interest rate you can charge. And so the loan officially comes at the highest interest rate, but you don't go borrow it. You go hire a second company owned by the same people to help you process the loan, and there's fees associated with that. And so they charge you to help you do the loan and process the loan, and we're going to go get you a loan from our company number 2 that we own. And add it all together, it's 2-3 times the legal amount.
Okay.
That's how they do it. And it ought to be against the law to do it like that too.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe some good lawyer ought to line that out. In his spare time, between his work and his family and his cooking and all the other things he does, directing traffic with Lucy at the Thanksgiving deal yesterday. But by the way, that was pretty cool. I encourage you next year if you can help with that. Matter of fact, I was talking to Lucy today, and if it wasn't for the people who were on probation, the driving and making deliveries, they wouldn't have enough. There's no way they'd have enough people to help make deliveries because they have a lot of high school groups and children's groups that come in to help pack the boxes, but somebody has to take them to the families. And this is what Becky and I ended up doing yesterday. I think we took 11 boxes would fit in our car, and it was neat to see the faces of those that we deliver food to. Most of the ones we delivered to were senior adults. Different ones said, they probably don't really have a need. I don't know whether they had a real need or not, but I can tell you this, it was fun delivering the food to them because they were very thankful and they were excited. And so to me, it was a very worthwhile deal. And so I encourage if you can come and drive next year, Dawn will be promoting it through our children's ministry. They've been doing it for years and years, but it's a great opportunity to go and spend. I think we were here at the church at 8. We were there on 8:30. And then I think from maybe 9:30 to around 11:30, we delivered food. And so I encourage you to do that. The other one is retirement loans. Living comfortably after 65 is really just overrated, right? Those of you retirement age. So, it is so much better for us to go and take loans out of our 401ks today so we can pay these huge tax rates rather than having a nice nest egg saved for later. So that when we get to retirement age, when we get about 70 and all our money's gone, we can go move in and live with our adult children. I wish Missouri was here so she could hear that. That's my marketing strategy, my plan. My retirement plan is to come live with her. And she'll probably put me in some nursing home. So I may be living in a box in the woods somewhere. So I just would encourage you not to borrow. Unless you're about to go bankrupt and you just have to draw out of your savings, I would encourage you not to do that. To really just pretend like that money doesn't exist. The other one really is, and sometimes we don't have a lot of choice in this one, but if you can, stay away from the 30-year lease. Do a 15-year lease instead if you can do it. Currently the rates I think are right around, I guess they're actually now about between 3 and 4% most time on house notes. With a 4% rate, if you have a 30-year mortgage of $225,000, you're going to pay around $161,000 in interest. If you finance that same $225,000 on a 15-year mortgage at 4%, your interest would be around $74,000 in interest. That's an $87,000 difference. Now, what could you do with $87,000? Maybe pay for your child's college, or maybe put it in your retirement fund. And so I'd encourage you, if you can at all possible, try to go with a 15-year mortgage instead of 30-year mortgage because you just get eat up with the interest. The fourth thing I want to talk about here this morning is we're to save now for the future. Save now for the future. Proverbs 13:22 says, a good man leaves inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. If you go back and you look at Proverbs 13, not just in verse 22, but the verses even that surround it, one of the points that Solomon is making here is that we as parents, it is our responsibility to provide for the moral and the physical needs of our children. That we have a responsibility not only to take care of them physically, and financially, but also morally. That we have a responsibility before God to raise them up in the fear and the admonition of the Lord. And so, as we think about saving for the future, we need to think about the big things. And I want to quickly go through some of the things we need to save. And I know I'm sort of running out of time, so I won't be long. One is we need to save for the rainy day. Everyone's going to have one. Matter of fact, statistics show that over a 10-year period, 78% of Americans will have a major financial setback during a 10-year period. That's 78% of us will have some type of financial setback, whether we lose a job, we have a medical emergency. It could be all kinds of different things. And so we need to prepare ourselves for it. If we don't prepare for those rainy days, for those times of emergency, then we're going to find ourselves in trouble and find ourselves under great debt again. Second is gifts for birthdays, Christmas, and other special occasions. We need to save up for those things rather than putting those on a credit card. And then we end up paying twice as much for the same thing. The third thing is our car. Instead of borrowing money, we need to look at trying to save up, because even if we have a good car we plan on keeping until the wheels fall off of it, the wheels eventually do fall off of it. And also there's different kind of problems that we need to have. That the car will break down, we have to do repairs, and it's a blessing to have money in your rainy day fund, your emergency fund, that you can pull out and pay for new tires or pay for a new motor or whatever it may be without having to borrow money. The fourth thing is retirement. We all know we should be saving for retirement throughout our careers, but most of us do not. And so we need to be considering that. Listen, if you're young, if you're 18 or 20, even if it's $25 a month, and I'm not a financial guru, but if you just start putting $25 a month or $25 a week into a retirement type plan, it's amazing how that money begins to build and roll over the long term. One of my good friends, we were on vacation with him one year, and he teaches Dave Ramsey's course for high school students at their high school. He teaches that in Tennessee. And he was explaining to his daughters, who I think at the time the youngest one was about 3 or 4. The oldest one I think was maybe 4th or 5th grade. And he was already explaining to them, teaching them about finances and how even now if they would take a little bit of their allowance or money they earn babysitting, or of course a 3-year-old you're not babysitting hopefully, but you begin to lay those principles, if they begin to put that money aside, even if it's in a college fund, that what that money would look like even when they get into their 20s and 30s, if they would even then begin to prepare for the future. And so I encourage you to do that. The fifth thing is college. I know for some of us, we just know that our kid's going to be the smartest kid in the world, and that they're going to get a full scholarship because they're so smart at MIT or one of the military academies. But the reality is that even with scholarships, there's still a lot of expenses that you have to do. And I know for some of you, your kid's going to be the superstar, the next Michael Jordan, and they won't really need college. And if they do, they'll be good enough, they'll get a 4-year ride. The reality is that's more than likely probably not going to happen. So you need a plan for it not happening. If it does happen, my best friend growing up, his dad was a CPA and started saving money when he was born, started putting money into an account. And my buddy was real smart. And so when he went to college, he had enough scholarships to pay his way. And so that money his dad had invested for him, he was able to buy a new car and do some other things with. And so start when they're little, and then you don't end up like me. You get out of all your debt, and then you start getting back in debt with parent loans. And so prepare for college. The fifth thing is to be generous. Proverbs 11:25, it says, whoever brings blessings will be enriched, and one who waters will himself be watered. And the point of Proverbs 11:25 is, and really this section around Proverbs 11, is that we receive back according to our own behavior. It's not the amount, it's about the heart. The stingy and the greedy person will not have many friends, and they will eventually lose everything that they hold so dear, because you can gain the whole world, and yet if you lose your soul, you've gained nothing. And so we need to be generous. One of the ways to do that is through our tithe. And so I really want to encourage you to give at least 10% to God. Again, it's important for us to remember that tithing was created for our benefit. It was created for our benefit. It's set up, God asked us to tithe because it helps teach us to keep God first in our lives, because our natural tendency is to love money. And it's not money that's the root of all evil. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. And so if we don't give back to God, then we become selfish and we begin to be consumed by our money, and money becomes our God. And it's impossible to serve both God and to serve money at the same time. And so tithing is really created for our benefit. It helps us to learn how to love God first in our life, or to keep Him first in our life, but also it teaches us how to be unselfish people. Unselfish people make better husbands, wives, friends, relatives, employees, and employers. It's that stingy person that's the employee that's going to steal from you when you're not looking. God is trying to teach us how to prosper over time rather than trying to get rich quick. Many people have observed over that after they've stopped tithing, their financial situations seem to get worse. In the book of Malachi, God promises that if we do not rob Him of the tithe, that He will rebuke our devourers and He will protect us. And the truth is this: if you cannot live off 90% of your income, the reality is you probably can't live off 100% of your income. And so I encourage you to sit down, look at your budget, and then to see some things you may need to cut out so that you can get to a point where you can give at least 10%. And the key is to start somewhere. Maybe you can't do 10%. Give 5%. Start somewhere. Tara printed out something to me a while back that it listed every family that's given over the last. She did it over a month. It was like from October to October, and it didn't say, John Smith gave X dollars. It just said family 1, family 2, and I think there were like 140 families that gave. The little offering that our children take up in G-Force, they were number 71 on our list. That means the change that our children put in a plate was more than another about 40 people that gave. And so I'm not here to rebuke you or to jump on you about it. Jesus didn't do it. That's between you and God. But there is something about it. If we're willing to rob God, what does that say about our priorities? What does it say about what's really important to us? And so I think we should think through those things. We should think through how we respond to God's call to us to give. God says in Malachi 3:10 that He says, test me in this. Put Him to the test. Commit to tithe over 6 months and be faithful with it and see if God takes care of you. Now, I'm not going to say if you give $10, God's going to give you 100 back, because I don't believe Scripture teaches that, even though there's some preachers that preach that. But I do believe that God will take care of your needs. I think we could look through here in this building. There's a lot of folks that could say that they've seen over and over again how God has been faithful in giving the tithe. The second part of that is to be generous to others. It's through giving to others that we learn to be content. The reason is that givers recognize that they have enough for themselves and for others. When you're in debt, begin by giving 10% to your church, and occasionally, as God provides, to give to others. And then once you begin to get out from underneath the bondage of that debt, then you can begin to invest more and more in others. And what you will see is that God will use your little to accomplish much. God will use your little to accomplish much. I'm going to sort of conclude with this. On January the 11th, which is a Wednesday night, we're going to begin a Financial Peace University class. It'll be on Wednesday nights from 6:30 to 8 p.m. It's a 9-week class, and I know some of you are probably going to gasp at this. The cost is $93. But listen, we need to look at it as an investment. But at the same time, if you were to come to me and you say, Pastor, my family's in a bind, and we need to do that, and we've looked at cutting everything. I mean, we've looked at cutting out extra going out to eat. We've looked at a lot of different things, and man, I can only come up with $40 or $30 or $25 or whatever it is. I can promise you, I will do whatever I have to do to help you get through it. But you need to have some skin in the game, because if you don't, then you won't be committed to it. You won't be committed to the homework. You won't be committed to the things that you got to do to get through the class. Has anybody in here been through the financial piece? Did it help? Okay, they all bobbled heads. Recommend. And so I encourage you. Even if you're doing doing okay financially, I think it'd be a good investment for you. There's a sign-up sheet on a clipboard on the Welcome Center for you to put your name. And I'll get more information to you later. It's not real fancy like Tara would have done if she created it. It's got a logo, and it's got like numbers with lines beside it because I did it. This morning I did it. I remembered this morning that I hadn't done it or hadn't asked her to do it. So I just want to encourage you to do that, to pray about it, to make a commitment. Because listen, I can tell you this, that when you get out from underneath the debt, it is so freeing. It's so wonderful that when, somebody's supposed to go to Burkina Faso or going to Mexico, and God spurs your heart and you want to write a $100 check, that because you're not under debt, you can write that $100 check and not feel bad about it. Or to be in a place where you lose your job and yet you're not losing everything because you have some reserves built back because you're not under the weight of debt. And so, again, there's a sign-up sheet out there. In a moment, I'm going to pray. Do you have a closing song for us? And so I'm going to pray, then Jordan's going to come lead us in a song. I know we went a little bit long today. Forgive me for that.